This is the GHG savings calculator. The first tab in this workbook is the user guide. This explains the functionality and walks you through step by step how to use each piece of the tool. This tool supports three main functions. The first is calculating individual energy savings and greenhouse gas savings values for more than 40 measures available in ETRM, then exporting those results in the Curtis format. The second is importing pre-calculated energy savings, then calculating the corresponding GHG savings and exporting those results in the Curtis format. And the third is bulk processing heat pump water heater, heat pump HVAC, and duct optimization projects using ETRM to calculate energy savings, greenhouse gas savings, and export those results in the Curtis format. The first process I'll run you through is calculating deemed savings for individual measures. This process is detailed in the first section of the user guide, labeled Individual Savings Calculation. If this is your first time using this functionality, you'll need to first get an API token from the ETRM website. The instructions for that are listed in section 0 here. I already have my API key, so I will proceed on to step 1. The first step here is just clicking this refresh measures list, which loads in or updates the ETRM measure list that you'll be selecting your measures from. I'll go ahead and do that. The next step in the process is to choose a measure on the calculator tab. This button will take me right there. Once I get there, I'll select which measure I'm going to be calculating deemed savings for. Up in the top row, you can see that I have fields where I can set the measure, define the census tract, set a project ID, and choose a priority population associated with this project. I've already entered values for the last 3 fields, but I want to change the measure that I'm calculating deemed savings for. So I'm going to go to this drop-down menu of supported ETRM measures and choose this SWBE006 ceiling insulation measure. After I select it, it'll do some API calls behind the scenes to the ETRM database to make sure it's got the latest version of that measure, and it'll download some associated savings potentials for that measure. You'll notice that the values in row 3 changed. These are the determinants associated with this measure, so the values that allow you to calculate a deemed savings for a project associated with this measure. The first of these, insulation R value, is measure specific, but these other ones will be consistent across many of the measures in this tool: building type, building location, etc. So to calculate deemed savings, I just need to define some values for each of these determinants, and I'll go down the line selecting from these drop-downs for each. Once I've completed selecting the values for the determinants, I then need to enter the square footage. For this measure, square footage is the unit associated with the measure. For others, it'll be different. It could be the capacity of the installed appliance, or it could be just one per unit installed. So this number will vary here, or the unit here will vary, but in this case, it's square footage. So I'm going to enter 1200 as my square footage, and then I'll go ahead and click Calculate Savings. Once I calculate savings, you can see that the table in rows 8 through 11 fills in. Per unit savings are listed in row 9, and the total savings, which is those per unit savings times the square footage, are listed in row 11. If I happen to, on this project, have 3 1200 square foot homes or units that received this same ceiling insulation, so all the other determinants were the same across those 3, I could enter a multiplier here to multiply those total savings by 3, and then that'll automatically update the total savings. Once I've verified that everything on this page looks correct, got my census tract, my project ID, and the priority population, and that the savings look accurate, I can export those calculations to the project summary sheet, which is where we prep all the data before generating the Curtis Ready document. So once I click that button, I get a pop-up window telling me that this data has exported successfully to the project summary sheet. It's also logging to a calculations log on a hidden sheet just for documentation's sake, which records all of the determinant values that you had selected in this calculation, if that ever needs to be referred to in the future. And you can see that row is now populated in row 2 here. Now, one thing to know when using the deemed savings calculator in this process, there are a number of fields that are necessary for the Curtis upload that do not get pulled over to the project summary sheet when using this calculator, so you have to manually enter them on this tab for any projects that you use the deemed savings calculator within the tool for. Things like project name, date operational, funding recipient, etc. So we're just really carrying over those savings numbers. You can see those here in columns T and U, and the pretty basic information about the project itself that you entered. If I had other measures that I wanted to calculate deemed savings for, I could go back to the calculator tab, select the new measure, and go through the same process for that measure. But in this case, I'm going to advance the demo and go on to the second functionality that this tool allows you to use. For this process, you'll need a couple of files ready to go. The first of which is your actual energy savings file. I'll be using an example of such a file in this scenario, and you'll also need the Curtis format template. The first step in this process is obviously preparing that project data file. So it needs to be an XLSX file with all the required columns. You can refer to the sample file for an example of those required columns. Once you've got your import sheet ready, you'll advance to step 2, which is to actually import that project data into the tool. The first thing before you import is actually to check whether you want to clear the data out of your project summary sheet. We're going to be importing into the project summary sheet in this example, and we want it to be cleared because the data that we're importing is all that we're going to want to push out to Curtis in the end. So I will go ahead and clear this project summary sheet by clicking this button here. And it's just telling me that this will clear one row from the project summary sheet. Go ahead and do that. And once that's done, I will advance to step 2.2, which is to import the input file and calculate the GHG savings. Select my pre-configured file here. And once I hit enter, I get a pop-up window on my other monitor. So I'm going to drag it over here and just show it to you, telling me that there's 783 rows that were imported as a result of this step. Those go to the project summary tab, but you don't even have to go there to advance through the process to the next step. The next step is step 3, which is aggregating by project ID, census tract, and priority population to get your Curtis ready summary. So I will go ahead and export the values or the savings from this imported sheet over to the Curtis ready summary sheet. This gets it all in the format that I need it in for the Curtis export. Go ahead and click yes. And this message just tells me that I've successfully written to the Curtis ready summary sheet those 768 rows. When I click that export button, if it's the first time you're doing it, you might be asked to grant access to the folder where you've put your format template for the Curtis export. Otherwise, you'll just be taken straight away to the message that tells you your export is complete. It tells you the destination file, so where this data was written, and summary of the rows copied and all the columns that you've copied over. And it'll show you the document itself. So this is the final product ready to push out in the proper Curtis format, taking in all of the data that you imported in the first step. The final way this workbook can be used is to process heat pump water heater, heat pump HVAC, and duct optimization projects in bulk. So to calculate deemed energy savings from a bulk data import for these types of measures. These are high volume measures, and we selected these to optimize in this workflow specifically because they are such high volume. Similarly, as in the second pathway, you'll need a couple of input files, the first being the actual project data, and the second being that Curtis format template for the Curtis export. Step one of this pathway is to prepare your project data file, so get that into the right format with all the required columns. Those should have been provided or should be provided by CARB. And then the second step is to import project data using this import input file button. So when I click that, I get a file picker, and I'm going to select that input calculate energy savings file that I prepared in step one. This will tell me, well, first it asks me whether I want to clear the bulk import sheet. I do, since I've already pushed out the prior data in the Curtis format. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that existing data. If I wanted to just add to what I already had there, I could click no here and import this to the append this to the end of the list in the project summary sheet. But I'm going to clear it here. Okay, and this tells me that I've imported all 1269 rows onto the bulk import sheet. That data that I've imported is just the raw project data, so I don't yet have my deemed savings. So the next step in the process is to retrieve those. Step 3 looks up the electric and gas savings for each row based on the building type, vintage, climate zone, and of course the measure, as well as the other project data associated with that row. I'll go ahead and click that now, and it's just going to give me a little message that says the bulk import pipeline is starting. This could take several minutes. You can monitor progress in Excel status bar at the bottom of the window. So that's referring to the lower left corner here, where you can see the progress as it advances through this process. Once the processing is completed and all the deemed savings have been retrieved, I'll get a message telling me that it's been processed successfully, and it'll tell me how much time it took, so just under 3 minutes for these 1,269 rows. With that process complete, I can move on to step 4. So I'll scroll down in my user guide. This is where it's going to start to look a lot like prior pathways in this workbook. At this point, the first thing I'll need to do is evaluate whether I need to clear my project summary sheet. I have some of that data still from the last step in the process, or the last pathway that we went through, as I showed there briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that because I've already exported that data out. It's just telling me I'm going to clear those 783 rows. Continue, and that's done. And then the next step is to export that bulk import data that I just brought in from my sheet outside of this workbook to the project summary sheet. So I'll click this button. It takes a moment to pull that data into the project summary sheet, and I'll get a message telling me that the export to that summary sheet has been successful. Bulk export has completed. All 1,269 rows pushed over to the project summary sheet, and it takes me right there. Back on the user guide, just as we did before, we'll go from the project summary sheet then to the Curtis Ready Summary Sheet. So I'll click this Export to Curtis Ready Summary Sheet button. This just lets me know that it will clear all the existing data in that Curtis Ready Summary Sheet. We've already processed that and pushed that out in the prior pathway, so no worries here. And I've successfully written those 213 rows to the Curtis Ready Summary Sheet from that project summary import. Just as before, again, the next step is to review that Curtis Ready Summary Sheet now that it's been imported from our bulk import. And you can just scroll through the list, see that you've got what you expect to see that things have aggregated as you expect them to by census tract. Confirm that you've got the savings calculations all the way on the right. And if everything's looking good, jump back to the user guide and export out to your Curtis format. Our export's complete, and it's written to this new Curtis format file. Total of 213 rows and all 59 columns. And here is that output. And just to keep my workbook clean, I can come back to the user guide, go to the final step in this pathway, which is to clear all exported. This will clear the bulk import sheet of all those rows that I brought in as part of this pathway, just so that my workbook is clean for the next time I need to come in and use this tool.